concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Livestream. Boom. Oh, yeah. What a good view. But let's not enjoy my messy room for too long, because it's Sunday afternoon, and it's time for the Q&A. No ASMR for you guys. When's that QAV-S build coming? Hidden Hollows wants to know. Hidden Hollows, good question. You mean this QAV-S build? You mean this QAV-S build? This one here? When is it coming? I'll show you. More on that in a second. Welcome to Livestream, everybody. It's Sunday afternoon. We're going to do some Q&A. I'll be answering your questions and just talking about whatever I want to talk about. When is that QAV-S build coming? Check this out. It's just a giant black screen. It's not that interesting. Come on. Come on. You mean this QAV-S build? Oh. This one? Woo, look at that timeline. Oh, man. This QAV-S build right here. Yes, sir. It's coming. As you can... What are you doing, Premiere? As you can see, it's pretty much edited. It's pretty much edited. It's just a matter of getting it posted. Yeah, that's probably coming out this week. If you have got the QAV-S frame, the JB edition, or, you know, you could do the same build with, well, to be honest with you, you could do the same build with any frame if you really wanted to. But obviously, I'll be doing it with my QAV-S. It is coming this week, the build, and it's tough. It's tough because, like, you can see that which motors I got on here. I got the FPV cycle motors, and thank you. I said to Bob, look, I need these motors for this build. Can I buy? Have you got a set like in the back room? Have you got some I could buy from you? And he sent me a set. Because I said to him, I thought you were just waiting for the updated bells, but you still had motors. Can you just send me anything that I could use in the build? So he figured something out, and he got me a set of motors. Cool. That's not going to help you if you're trying to build this. So I recorded a little segment, which is, hey, welcome to the world of 2021 where everything is on back order and you can't get all the parts you want. If you can't build this with the exact parts that I used, here are some alternative suggestions, which, I mean, it kind of dilutes the whole, this is my special build scenario. But, I mean, you got to just be realistic. You got to do what you got to do. So, I'm happy with how it flies, though. I'm pretty happy with how it flies. Chris Rosser did a video analyzing the resonance characteristics of the frame. And I actually, he made some suggestions for how to make it fly better. Maybe I'll show you guys some footage of how it flew with his suggestions. Yeah. But before we do that, welcome to the stream, everybody. This is my main screen right here. I'm going to be checking out your comments. How much does the full build cost? Good question. I'd have to add up the numbers. Maybe we could do that. Kip FPV asked in the YouTube chat. That's what we're going to be doing. I'll be watching the YouTube chat, answering your questions in the YouTube chat. If you want to make sure that I get to your question, definitely leave a super chat by hitting that $ right down here. And it'll call you. You can see right here, we got a couple super chats already. Thank you, Mitchell Grave, for €5. I hope you learned something today. That's my goal. And thank you, Riet9, for $5 Australian, or as I like to call them, dollary dues. Please, Australians, don't be offended. After watching hundreds of hours of videos, I've decided on getting myself into a mango White Claw. If you're going to drink a White Claw, I do feel that mango is the best flavor. We've also got these beautiful people over here on the right side. And this is my Discord server. These are my patrons. That's how you get on the Discord server, is you become a patron at the link in the video description, patreon.com, where you can subscribe to me for as little as $2 a month. You could help a starving YouTuber for as little as the price of a cup of coffee a month. You could help a starving YouTuber buy lights. Hello, Discords. I give them a chance to say hello. How much would the whole thing cost? Well, let's pull out my old calculator. The frame is about $70, I believe. The flight controller is the JBF7. Ooh, I'm going to spoil all the parts. So you guys watching the live stream can go buy the parts before they're all out of stock, or maybe they're already out of stock. The flight controller is the JBF7. Where's the ESC combo, though? $92. The combo is out of stock. Bummer. Let's just add $100 there. We've got the FPV cycle motors. Let's just say that if you bought the most expensive motors, you're going to pay about $25 a motor, so there's another $100 in motors. You could spend less. And then we're at, no, that wasn't, I didn't mean to multiply by 100. I meant to go plus 100. And then where's that leave us? receiver, let's say you spent 20 or 25 bucks on the receiver. Let's say 25 bucks because let's assume you're going to do something like Crossfire or Ghost. And that's it. So now you're at 300 bucks before you get to the video system. So if you're doing analog, you're probably looking at 400 bucks. If you're doing DJI, less than 400 bucks. That's not fair. The VTX that I recommend for analog is the Rush Tank Solo, which is like 40, 45 bucks. It's not cheap. Camera, you can spend 20, 30 bucks. You're less than 400 bucks. Let's say you're between, say, 350 and 400 for the analog build, and you're closer to 450 for the DJI build, if you can get a Caddx Vista, which you can't. So that's how much it costs. But as you may know, if you saw my last perfect freestyle build, the goal is to like make it as good as possible, no compromises, not even a consideration for cost. Just basically like pick the premium. You know how like sometimes you'll go to PC Part Picker and you'll just build like a premium PC with all the parts you could never afford, or just put together your dream build. Well, that's kind of the idea of this, is to just put together my dream build. And yeah, harder to do in a world where stuff's always out of stock, though. What are you gonna do? So you want to see, so Chris Rosser, I've got a link on my channel to his video. He did a resonance analysis, and I implemented his filter suggestions. Which of these is the right video? Hang on. Is it this one? Okay, hang on. Let me show you what I'll show you a little freestyle. A little freestyle. Okay, here we go. I don't even know if this is good freestyle. But let me make sure the sound is turned on as well. Oh, that's a little too loud. Hello, turn the sound. Go away. Oh my goodness gracious. Here we go. That's better. Still needs some tuning. You can still hear some wobbles there. I don't know what I was doing there. Bannister Post, I didn't do anything specific. I just took it out and flew it. You know, I think, no. This wasn't, that was not with his suggestions. Where's the one with his suggestions? This is before his suggestions. I think the wobble was a little better. Where's... It's still on the GoPro. Oh, haha, it's still on the GoPro. The flight with his suggestions is still on the GoPro. There you go. Well, it was a little better, I think. I'm not going to start copying files and risk my live stream, but we'll have to take a look at that. It needs a little tuning, though. I do agree. You can hear a little bit of wobble in the motors, a little bit of determ noise. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it's flying. Is the perfect JB freestyle build actually perfect? It's my perfect build. That's my point. It's my perfect. It doesn't mean it's perfect for everybody, but it's my perfect build. I pick the parts that I want. Lound5 says the Caddx Vista Nano is in stock at Rotor Riot. Yeah, but the Caddx Vista Nano is trash. I mean, if you need a Vista, but you have a camera from somewhere else, okay, but that's probably not what's happening. The Nano, I wouldn't, no. I mean, the only thing that the Nano is really good for is very light builds where, like, you need to save 5 grams as much as possible. You know? I wouldn't put that on a 5-inch. The image quality is much worse. It only has 69. It only has high quality. It doesn't have low latency mode. There's all kinds of reasons why I would pass on that. The Caddx Nebula Pro is an acceptable alternative to the Vista, which is a good thing because I think the Vista is not being made anymore. License to drive. My memory is that the Nano, the Caddx Vista Nano, is like 4.5 grams lighter than the regular Vista. It's not that much lighter. Now, if you're building an 85 millimeter toothpick or something like that, yes. Is 85 millimeter the right size for a toothpick? That's not 3 inches, is it? You see what I'm getting at, though. If you're building like an 85 millimeter whoop or a digital toothpick and you need to save 5 grams, okay. If you need a nano-sized camera because your frame or your canopy doesn't support a micro-sized camera, okay. But I think by the time you get up to a Cinewhoop, everything from like a heavy 3-inch, not like a toothpick, but a heavy 3-inch on up through 5-inch, etc., that 5 grams that you save in weight doesn't matter anymore because the image quality is so much worse on the Nano, I think. So, can you get the QAV in Europe somehow? Che FPV. Good question. Ultimately, that is a Get FPV question. Lumineer manufactures the frame. Sometimes they have international distributors, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be the case. Unfortunately, it seems like if you want it, you're going to need to order it from the USA and pay stupid shipping. And I don't know what the solution is for that. I mean, what's the alternative? To sell it on Banggood? Yeah. Nebula Pro is good enough. I do agree. Why does nobody put a 20x20 ESC on a 5-inch freestyle build? Asks Martin. The T-Motor Ultra Mini is a beast. Martin, they do. Cricket, for example, is one guy I know for sure. Cricket has his own stack. It's made by Newbie Drone, and he runs this 20 millimeter flight controller and ESC on all his builds. So they do it. My experience, and I've talked about this on the stream before, I'm sure some people are rolling their eyes. My experience with 20 millimeter ESCs is that they blow too much. That didn't come out right. If you turtle mode them aggressively, they just pop. Now, some would say, well, you just haven't found the right one yet. And I recently explored some 20 millimeter ESCs for my racing build that I was hoping would be more durable, specifically the Redux Air ESC. By the way, Redux Air, the guy, I always blank on his name. He's the Redux Air guy. He says a batch of Redux Air ESCs is coming. He has been able to source the FETs and the controllers, the microcontrollers, the processors that he needs to do another run of Redux Air ESCs. And I said, when and where? Just tell me and I'll get the word out. But if you're holding out for a Redux Air ESC, there's a batch of them coming. So that's nice. Patrons, I'll let you know first in the Discord channel, of course. Got to do something for the patrons. So the Redux Air, we looked at the Diatone 75 amp race. We looked at a couple 20 millimeter ESCs that might be good, but in general, the 20 millimeter flight controllers, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not as versatile just because there's not as much room for the pads, so they can be a little more restrictive when soldering them up. Sometimes you end up using plugs when maybe you would prefer to solder, or if you do solder, the solder pads are tiny. But 20 millimeter ESCs, they fundamentally can work, in my opinion. But 20 millimeter flight controllers, they fundamentally can work, in my opinion. But 20 millimeter ESCs, you got to be real picky about which ones you pick, because, I mean, like my theory is, you could make an argument that on a racing drone, turtle mode is not as important, because by the time you crash out of a race, you've probably already lost. Now, I know there's cases, well, the counter argument is, there was this one race where I crashed and somebody else also crashed. And because I was able to turtle mode and finish, I got to advance and he didn't. Oh, okay. Sure. But ultimately, if you are racing and you are not able to turtle mode, you're going to get your quad back. But if for freestyle, I feel like turtle mode is absolutely mandatory, because many times when you freestyle, you will crash somewhere where you cannot get to the quad. Either because maybe you were flying somewhere that it would be trespassing if you were physically to, like, say, cross a fence or something, or because you've crashed on top of a freaking tower or a building, which I'm not advocating, but it's just a thing that freestyle pilots sometimes do. Or you've crashed at the bottom of a cliff, somewhere where you can't get the quad back. With freestyle quads, a lot of times if you don't turtle, you're not getting your quad back. So I feel like turtle mode is mandatory for freestyle quads. And that's why I don't like 20mm ESCs. You have to be really careful about which ones you pick. There are some better ones coming out, and maybe I would switch to 20mm. You do save a little bit of weight, but yeah. Yeah, Aerobrat says the 20mm Redux is huge. I'm not sure how much weight savings there are. Exactly. So you've gone to 20mm mounting. So we've got a frame. The reason you would use an ESC like the Redux is that you've got a frame like the 533 Switchback Pro. It's sized for 20mm mounting. So you're stuck with a 20mm ESC. But you're not saving much weight by the time you go with a big one like the Redux. Now let's take a look here. We'll go a different direction here. People in the Discord are posting this motor as an alternative to the FPV cycle motor. Now wait, 2405. Hang on, 2405? No. That's not the one, isn't it? The 2506? Don't they have a 2506? Yeah. So a lot of people think that if you can't get the FPV cycle motor, you should get this 2506 motor, because although I don't know if Bob has been a little cagey about his motor sizes, but he says a lot of people say that the FPV cycle motors are 2506. Can we get this webpage to load? Can we get this webpage to load? So a lot of people see this iFlight 2506 motor and they think that's a good alternative to the FPV cycle motor. It is not the same motor at all. So this iFlight motor, first of all, it's like 38 grams. Yeah, 39 grams. Whereas the FPV cycle motor is like 33 grams, even though they're both supposedly about the same size. Where did Bob save the weight? I have no idea. I have no idea how he made such a big motor so light. But the FPV cycle motor is also 1650 kV, and the iFlight motor is also 1650 kV, whereas the FPV cycle is like something like 1900. This is not a 5-inch motor. I mean, you can, but this is more a 6 or 7-inch motor for long range. So this is not an acceptable replacement for the FPV cycle motor, even though it is about the same size. They are just different behaving motors. It looks like a great motor, but not for 5-inch freestyle. Now, other people are wondering about this 2405. I couldn't say. Is this a 5-inch freestyle motor? 2405. It's like 2306, but you've made it a little wider and a little narrower, or a little shorter. It's 30 grams, 31 grams. That's impressive. Chuyi Du says, iFlight is selling an 1850 kV version of the 2506 motor in China. Yeah, if it's 38 grams, though, I'm not sure I want it. I'm not sure I want it. I don't know how Bob got his down to 33 grams, but 38 grams that's a heavy freaking motor for a 5-inch freestyle. Let's do the math real quick. Let's do the math on this motor. Hang on, shrink down there, calculator. 2405. So that's 12 squared times 5 times 3.14. That's 2260 cubic millimeters in volume. Compare that to, let's say, a 2306. 2306 is going to be 23 divided by 2 is 11.5 squared times 6 times 3.14. Yeah. So this 2405 motor is about, say, 10% less volume than a 2306. It's lighter by a couple grams. It's debatable. It's debatable. I wouldn't assume that would be a great, like, freestyle motor. It probably has its place. My gut feeling is it's going to have its place on a lightweight 5-inch build. Maybe like a cruiser or longer range quad, although 5-inch isn't a great place to be for long range. I don't know. That's an interesting one, but I wouldn't jump on it. Honestly, the FPV cycle motor, and I hate to say this because my philosophy for a long time has been that motors basically all perform the same, pretty much. But these stupid FPV cycle motors are so freaking good. I notice it most when I do a big dive, and then at the bottom of the dive, I need to arrest my fall. You feel like you have so much more control with these motors to hit that. Whereas before you would either have, boom, undershot and hit the ground, or overshot and kind of popped up and been, it so many times I'll do a big, because I like to do these big punches, right? I'll punch up into the air, and then I'll do a big dive down and try to make a line down a tree. And then at the bottom, I'm like, oh crap, what do I do now? And I'll have to like, and level out. And on these FPV cycle motors, it feels like I have so much control. So, anyway. What is a cinematic motor? Good question. People in the Discord are checking out the cinematic motors. I would say a cinematic motor, if I were to design a cinematic motor, I would start with an N48 magnet, which nobody does these days. I would use a lower powered magnet. Lower powered magnets, in my opinion, will tend to run smoother. They will have less magnetic field strength, but they'll be less coggy and run smoother and make less power. Now, I'm not a motor designer, and nobody uses N48 magnets anymore. They're all using N52 magnets because everybody wants the most power they can on those thrust charts. In fact, this Flywoo motor that they're looking at says it uses an N54 magnet, which I don't think is actually a thing. I mean, I think N52 is the highest. Let's look at this. Magnet grades from K&J Magnets. N52, there you go, see? This web page, and I've looked this up before, and this is consistent. Everything I've looked at says that the strongest grade of magnet is N52. That there isn't a grade stronger than N52. That's just the most. Now, maybe that's changed, but we see quadcopter motor manufacturers saying they're using N54 magnets. What is that? Is that real, or is that just marketing? I don't know. They go to what's a cinematic motor? Presumably you would want smoothness over power. So maybe you would, like if I were to design a cinematic motor, I would say use like an N48 magnet and have like a 10 millimeter bearing. Larger bearings are also smoother. So, before I forget, I want to do a shout out here. I usually do these privately. I'll just put up an unlisted video. I usually don't do these on my live streams, but I'm going to forget. So I'm going to do this real quick, and I hope that he sees the message. Vince, this person, her name isn't in the here. We'll put his Instagram up. It's his birthday today. And I'm real quick going to do a shout out. His girlfriend asked if I would shout him out for his birthday. I usually do these privately in an unlisted video, but just today we'll make an exception. Great, happy birthday to Flying in Braille FPV. 33 years old. All you need to know is that he loves FPV. Here's a little shout out for Flying in Braille. Hopefully anybody who knows him will give him a link to this timestamp. Ooh, good motors. And let him know that I'm wishing him a happy birthday. Okay, moving on. Right, Tom LeBlanc says they're turning magnets up to 11. Yes, that's what they're doing. Can the QAV-S support the full-size DJI Air unit? Aviv Yam Shahor. Cannot. You need the Johnny for that. Anna, you copied Mr. Steele's build. Did I? If I'd copied Mr. Steele's build, I would have used an Apex. And I would have used Steele's motors. I heard a couple comments. I don't know if you guys had never seen the QAV-S before. People claiming that the QAV-S copied the Apex. I don't get it. Like, it has a split deck design. Split deck design. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. The split deck design, was the Reverb the first frame to do split deck? I bet there was a frame before the Reverb that did the split deck. I bet there was a frame before the Reverb, but the Reverb, I think, is the first big frame that... so the Apex actually copied the Reverb. But both of those are Impulse RC frames, so... what frame... Name a frame in the chat for that did the split deck design before the Reverb. So, then Anna thinks my motors copied Steele's motors. You could not be more wrong there. So Steele's motors are 2306 in size. He intentionally makes them weak and smooth. They're not powerful. Bob's motors are 2506 in size. So they're much bigger motors, much more powerful. Just the motors could not be more different. T-Motor F5 had a split deck. How long ago was that made, though? That's a relatively new frame, I think. So no, there's nothing like Steele's build about this. Steele builds ultra light. I mean, I tried to build lighter, but I'm sure Steele would consider this a heavy build. Everybody's just copying Blackout at the end of the day. The other thing I noticed about the because I went and looked at the QAV-S versus the Apex. Another thing I noticed about it is, take a look at this. Another thing I noticed about it is that, hang on. Let me get the right angle here. I need a side-on angle. Is there not one? I don't think there is one. This will do. So if you look at the Apex, notice that the Apex puts this standoff through the bottom plate, whereas the QAV-S puts this standoff through the arm. And one of the things that does is it just gives you fewer holes in the bottom plate, because now you've combined that. And another thing it does, although the Apex does a good job of dealing with this, anytime you've got this standoff through the bottom plate, it's very, very common to have a stress fracture appear just right at that standoff, because when you have frontal impacts, that's where the stress gets concentrated. Now, the Apex has done a good job of dealing with this, but you can see they've got this little bit of extra material here to help deal with that. But when you've got that screw hole going through the arm and the bottom plate, it reinforces that. So that's another difference there between the two frames that I think is relevant. But the biggest difference is that the QAV-S does not have screw holes through the center of the arms. And as strong as the Apex is, and no one's going to argue that the Apex is a weak frame, the Apex is a strong frame, it has screw holes through the center of the arms, which is going to weaken them. That's just a fact. anytime you've got screw holes through the arm, you're removing material. So, yeah. So, kudos. Credit where credit's due. The split deck design is pretty amazing. I mean, that definitely, Impulse RC definitely deserves credit for that. No doubt. But to say that it's a copy of it, I think is doing a disservice to Ryan Harrell. Ryan Harrell, the designer of the QAV-S, deserves a lot of credit for what he did. So. Alrighty, Anna. Head on out, Anna. Head on out of here. You're just pissing everybody off. All right. What's the point of the strange holes in the arms where the motors are placed? This is a prop wrench. This is a prop wrench. It's a prop wrench. You can use a spare arm as a prop wrench. This extra little slit here is just to save weight. That's all. JT Knives, why does GetFPV say it will not restock your JBF7? You got to ask GetFPV about that. I mean, we're still making it. They've just decided not to restock it, and I don't know why they would do that, but it's their decision. Oh, Bubby. You're very generous, Bubby, but I know you've got your own frame manufacturer there. Yeah. We got a bunch of super chats backing up. Let's get a couple more super chats out of the way. Lazy Norse, thank you for 100 Norwegian kroner. I think I fried the JBF7 when I soldered a Crossfire Nano to the USB powered pad. The USB port got really hot, and my PC thinks I unplugged something when I plug it in. Well, it does sound like you fried it. The first thing I would do is desolder. Anytime you solder something up and then you've got evidence of a short circuit, which is what you're describing, desolder the thing. So desolder the Crossfire Nano. The Crossfire Nano may be soldered up wrong. You may have gotten the wires flipped. Chances are good that there's been no permanent damage, but desolder the Crossfire, see if that gets rid of the frickin' short circuit, and see if it starts working again. K. Watson, thank you for a $5 super chat. No question. Just a super chat. Heck Tectica, thank you for a $5 super chat. Closest you've ever come to hitting a bystander with a quad. I had a semi-close call with a lady and her dog yesterday. She was nice about it, thankfully. I'll tell you that story. I've told this story on the live stream before, but it's been a while. I was flying at a park here in Knoxville with some other people. The people began to leave one by one, and it was just me and this other guy. And we were flying our last few packs. He left. I flew one more pack by myself, which was a mistake, especially at a park where there may be people walking around. But I thought I had a sufficient awareness. I did a split S over this little building, and as I came down on the other side of the building, there was a jogger there. And it was sheer coincidence that I didn't hit her. By the time I saw her, there was no time for me to react and avoid her. And thankfully I didn't. But I don't know, I thought I had been watching where everybody was and no one was coming my way. Somehow she snuck in. And so I landed, and I went and I said, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to fly so close to you. And she had not even noticed. She had been jogging and had her headphones on and hadn't even noticed. But I definitely took that to heart. And I never left home again. No. That's the closest I've come to hitting a bystander with a quad. Jay Frux, thank you for a $5 super chat. Eat Your Veg FPV, thanks for £10. watching this while finalizing the fitting of a Hemera to my SVO1. Spoiler alert, the wires are slightly too short. I'm on the Facebook group. I can help you out if it's needed when it's your turn. Yeah, I just got done putting a Hemera hot end on my Ender 3. Let me show you a picture of that. Let me show you. Hang on a second. I just got done putting a Hemera hot end on my Ender 3. Here are some pictures of the carnage. I had to learn to print PETG to. I got PETG reasonably dialed in a shortish time, so I could print the fan shroud and the mounting block. Got it mounted, and it is printing now. Still needs a little work. Still having some issues. But people ask, well, why did you put it on your Ender and not your Sovol? And the truth is that my Sovol is my workhorse. My Ender has always been like, okay, but my Sovol is my go-to. And so I thought, if I'm going to put the Hemera hot end on one, I'm going to put it on the one that's not working, that I'm not using, and get it, like, dialed in. And meanwhile, if I need to print anything, I can go print, something on my Sovol. Failsafe FPV says the PETG mounting blocks aren't great. I recommend picking a metal bracket from AliExpress. I mean, I guess you're probably right. It seems okay. Tinker Tweak FPV says, was it worth it? My Ender 3s print everything with minimal upgrades. Yeah, I mean, so one of my goals was to have a longer lasting hot end. I wanted an all metal hot end. I did some printing of these multi-GP gate hinges, and each one was about a 17-hour print. And so I printed like 10 of them, which is 170 hours. And my Sovol started printing badly. And it has a PTFE tube on the inside of the hot end that had worn out. And I thought, geez, every 25 hours, I don't know how many hours are on the printer total. Every 20, 25 hours of printing, I got to open up the hot end and replace this PTFE tube. Okay, it's not the end of the world, but I thought, why not just upgrade the thing to Hemera? By the way, I have a Hemera for the Sovol as well. I am going to upgrade it. I just wanted you can run the Hemera faster. You can run it at a faster speed than the stock hot end, but I heard some advice. I don't remember who this advice was from. It was from a person who runs a printing shop. So maybe it was Brent Collier, but I don't know if it was Brent Collier. I've talked to him about printing a lot. They said, if you want to print faster, just buy more printers. Like, let's say you've got an Ender and you can print at 50 millimeters per second. Well, it's going to take a lot of work to get the Ender to print at 100 millimeters per second with good quality. It's going to take a lot of upgrades and a lot of tuning. You could just buy a second Ender and you probably spend less money. And now you're printing twice as fast. Boom. So the guys who are printing 100, 200 millimeters per second, in some sense, that's just kind of like just bragging rights. They're not, that's not actually the best way to get lots of prints out. Just buy more printers. Print slower. But I really wanted to know that the hot end was going to work. It was going to be reliable. It's an all-metal hot end. It's a double-geared extruder that I'm going to get as good a results as I can, and I'm just going to be able to hit print and go as best as possible. License to Drive says, I haven't replaced the hot end of my Prusa in 3 years. I'm going to guess, License to Drive, that your Prusa has an all-metal hot end. If it doesn't, I'm shocked. But I was really excited, though. So Your Majesty asks, will you make a video on upgrading the Sovol? Yes. So the other reason I did the Ender first is I wanted to have done the Ender one time, so that I'm going to make a video about upgrading the Sovol. The thing is, if you want to upgrade your Ender 3 to a Hemera hot end, there are about a zillion tutorials. You don't need me to make one. But I'm going to make a tutorial for how to upgrade the Sovol to a Hemera hot end, and that's a tutorial that not everybody is already made. But I wanted to have the experience of having done it once on the Ender, so then I could know a little bit more what I'm doing by the time I go to the swivel. I had a great phone call with a guy from my Discord. He walked me through how to get the development environment set up and how to compile Marlin, so you could go into Marlin and make all the changes you need to make, which is super cool because, like, so often people are out there and they're like, hey, can you give me a version of Marlin compiled for the Chimera hot for the, and somebody gives you the firmware bit file to flash. But like, if you could just compile that yourself and you could make all these changes to the settings, like these options, convenience options, little tweaks that, yeah. And I'm so thrilled to be able to do that now and not have to just like, can somebody compile this for me, please? Please, sir, may I have a firmware? So I'm really looking forward to working on that on the Soval. But first, I got to get this Ender dialed in. It's printing, but there's some weird. I think the acceleration needs to be tuned for the new weight of the head of the carriage. So I need the Ender to be printing very well before I take the Soval offline, because I can't. I got to have one printer that's actually freaking working. So. The guy I'm talking to said, yeah, you got to upgrade the main board too, because if you upgrade the main board, there's these advantages. And I'm like, at that point, I don't even have a Soval anymore. I'll have upgraded the main board, the hot end, and the extruder. I mean, technically, I still have the motors, the stepper motors, and the frame and the power supply from the original Soval. It's not even a Soval anymore. But there you go. It is exciting. He told me about a feature. If you're into 3D printing, you know about this. There's a feature where it can use the dual stepper motors to automatically level the gantry. It'll use BL Touch, and it'll be like measure, and it'll level the gantry. So, it's exciting. Craig Marshall, I have the SKR Mini V1.2 mainboard in there. It does have the silent steppers. It does have the silent steppers. What soldering iron do I use? Ralph R. On my bench, I have a Heiko 888D. And in my backpack, I have a TS100. No, ZFPV, that's not just auto bed leveling. No, careful, ZFPV, think about it. Auto bed leveling, it doesn't ensure that your gantry is parallel to the bed. Auto bed leveling will move the nozzle up and down to match the contour of the bed, but it doesn't guarantee that your gantry itself is square to the bed. So if you have dual Z steppers and the right mainboard, you need a mainboard that can run the dual Z steppers separately, then it can automatically square up the gantry. That's different. It's like, oh, it's tempting. Oh, I want that. None of my prints actually need that, but it's kind of tempting anyway. Mine's an SVO1, Your Majesty. Let's get a couple more of these super chats out of the way. I was doing super chats and I got distracted talking about 3D printers. Thank you very much, by the way. The guy's name is FOG Yamato is his username on my Discord, and he spent like 2 or 3 hours walking me through how to compile. I mean, downloading the development environment was easy, but then we walked through the whole config.h file and looked at all the options, and he told me what all of them do and just gave me this great tutorial on all these Marlin options. It was super educational, super entertaining, and I really appreciate his time for doing that. So. Huff19, my frame, there's a Thingiverse album full of TPU parts made by, damn it. I'm blanking. I always blank on people's names. And he deserves Nick. His name is Chris Ney. Chris Ney. I knew there was an N in it. Chris Ney. There's a Thingiverse album of 3D prints for my QAV-S, and there it's up on Thingiverse. It's linked in my video description. Anyway. Yeah, Halfboard, I did not record that Marlin walkthrough. I didn't record that for a video. Maybe I should have, but I just kind of wanted to be able to sit down and listen and learn. So maybe I'll make a tutorial of some kind. Thank you, Jay Frux, for a $5 super chat. Eat Your Veg, 10 pounds, asking about the SV01. Jason Hind, thank you for $5. With everything being equal as it can be, Betaflight and Crossfire settings, why would my LQ so much lower on one quad compared to another? So Jason Hind, the first thing I would do is make sure that your LQ is actually working the same on the two quads. Go into the receiver configuration and see, like, for example, if you're using an aux channel, maybe one quad is set to show LQ and one is set to show LQ/RSSI. So make sure you're actually looking at LQ. The simplest thing to do is to go into your telemetry sensors, and there is an LQ telemetry sensor. I think there's one for TX and one for RX. Look at those telemetry sensors, or you can just look in the Crossfire receiver, the Crossfire setup, like the Lewis script or whatever. But make sure you're getting the LQ number from the Crossfire system itself, so you're 100% sure you're looking at the same number. At that point, if one receiver shows much lower LQ than another, physical damage would be my first thought. Like maybe one's damaged, like there's a missing capacitor got knocked off or something. Failsafe FPV, that is correct. Teaching Tech just did a video about leveling your gantry. The difference is that when you do bed leveling, what happens is that, let's say the bed is not slightly unlevel, it'll move the nozzle up and down to match the contour of the bed, but the whole time the gantry is not changing its angle. But what this will do is it will literally change the angle of the gantry to be parallel to the bed. And there are reasons why that's desirable. You don't know. Teaching Tech just did a video about it. It's pretty cool. Martin Wynn, thank you for a £5 super chat. I got the Ishi Novice 4. Short story, I crashed. Weak arm. Yeah, that was my concern about the Novice 4. It's a 4-inch long-range cruiser. It's not made for hard crashing. Will Flywheel Explorer work with my goggles as a spare? Yeah. Any analog 5 gigahertz, 5.8 gig FPV, which is basically most everything, will work with those goggles. No problem. KCFPV, thanks for another £1. Blue Cheese, thank you for 100 Danish kroner. JB, you shared a link to a rates converter for Betaflight, Raceflight, and KISS a couple of years ago. Who made it, how to find it, and maybe add DJI FPV drone rates. So Blue Cheese, I can tell you the DJI FPV drone rates are Betaflight actual rates. DJI confirmed this to me. So anything that can convert to Betaflight actual rates can convert to DJI rates. Now, that rate converter, I know Flight 1 has a converter to convert to Flight 1 rates. Oh, look at this. I found my own Facebook post from years ago. This is probably the exact one that you were asking about. 2018. I don't think this is this still working? Oh, it is. Hot damn. All right. There you go. Boom. Blue Cheese. There you go, my friend. That's it. I will say, I tried to use this to convert my Betaflight rates over to KISS, and I could not get it to feel right. It was so close, but then at the end of the stick throw, it would just go bonkers. So I never did quite get it right. And this won't convert Betaflight rates to if you want DJI, there is a Betaflight actual rates converter that can convert from standard Betaflights to actual rates. Here it is. Now, the problem is that now you're doing 2 conversions, and it's not perfect. Does it? Yeah, that's it. That's what I remembered. Thank you for pointing that out. I knew there was something wrong with this. The Calc Others buttons don't work. Can anybody get this working? Because what I had to do when I converted my KISS rates, this is probably why it didn't work, is I put my Betaflight rates in, and then I just kind of manually tweaked the KISS rates until it looked as close as possible, right? But there's an automatic Calc Others that gets the curve as close as it can be, and it doesn't work anymore. Can anybody download this GitHub file and get it actually working? It's still not perfect, but it'd be better than nothing. Briouch Dugaray wants to know, I'm about to solder my 533 switchback. Why did you choose to solder the battery wires sideways instead of straight back out, as the wires could have secured your capacitor? What's your up tilt? I can't remember. Let me get that quad. Where is that quad? Here it is. I'm trying to remember my exact logic. Like if you look at the quad, you can see that the receiver antenna is hanging off the back. I don't know. I mean, it could still have gone to the side. It certainly could go out the back. I think I know why. If you have your wires going straight out the back, now you've got this big bulk, and then you put your capacitor right on top of it. And it just, I feel like I prefer the soldering better. To the capacitor can get closer. I can't show you this on camera because I can't get in tight enough. The capacitor can get closer up to the joint so the legs are shorter. If the wires come out the side and then the capacitor comes straight out the back, you certainly could bring the wires straight out the back and then attach the capacitor to the wires. You certainly could, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not the direction I decided to go. Here is the GitHub link, sort of. That's not the GitHub link, though, is it? That's the converter. I think that, I mean, it says github.io, so I would guess that there's a GitHub repo for this project, but I don't know. I wish, hey, firmware developers, can you just do us all a favor and implement everybody else's rates? Can we just make that happen? Like, FetTech. I know. You just, it's open source. No one cares. Just put Betaflight rates into KISS. Oh, Betaflight, we hate Betaflight. I don't know if they feel that way. KISS rates are so much better. Okay, but I've flown the exact same Betaflight rates for like 4 years. That's just what my fingers want. And if I could just freaking put Betaflight rates in, yeah. I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. Race Flight 1, yeah, you give me a converter online. Just implement it. Just implement the actual rate curve. Who cares? Like, just add one little tiny function. It's just one little function. There's probably one little formula. A little quadratic formula. Right? How hard could it be? It's only code. Okay, I know programmers hate it when I say that. Programmers hate it when people say, that's only code. Just just type some code, and how hard could it be? Betaflight rates do support, Betaflight does it, by the way. Betaflight supports KISS rates. That's exactly right. Maybe I should just switch to KISS rates. 661FPV says your rates will still feel different because the PIDs are different. There is truth to that, but I swear to God, I swear, it's still different. But KISS is about keeping it simple. Oh, okay. Fine. Fine. Daniel Boo 2003, thank you for a $2 super chat. Do you have a link to some 3D files for your QAV-S? Yes, Daniel, that link is in, oh, here we go. I'll give it to you right now. The link is in the video description for the QAV-S video, but here it is as well. That's the link to the album on Thingiverse. The CFPV says, according to Fedorov, closed source is not even supposed to look at open source for ideas. I mean, I guess you could make an argument that if KISS were to implement Betaflight's rate curve, KISS would now contain GPL protected code, and you would have to release the source of KISS. By the strictest reading of the rules, I suppose that would be true. I mean, yes. But I mean, the rate curve is like, it's literally just a mathematical formula. X amount of stick deflection goes through this mathematical formula and becomes Y degrees per second. It's literally just a curve. So, like, can we just wink and look the other way this one time? Like, I'm not, despite the fact that I am a strong proponent of open source, and I will be as angry as anybody when somebody violates the GPL in a bad way. I also am aware that the GPL is incredibly difficult to work around and incredibly restrictive to a fault sometimes. So if somebody takes, like, the worst case scenario is somebody takes an open source project, they make it closed source, and then they sell the resulting product. Totally unacceptable. Somewhere on the other side of that line is somebody taking the rate curve formula from an open source project and implementing it. I'm fine. I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with that. Anyway. Buddy Jackson, thanks for a $10 super chat. At full stick deflection of a snap, roll, or flip, the quad continues to flip that direction. Buddy Jackson, definitely need a black box to troubleshoot this. To figure out whether you've got a desync happening or a problem with your controller. You say you've got more details in the email. We would definitely need to look at a black box. Let's briefly look in my inbox and see if I can find your message without taking up too much time on the live stream. Oh, here it is right here. Do we have a black box look? Oh, we do. Alrighty. Let's take a look at Buddy Jackson's quad that is having a problem. Okay. So Buddy said the quad continues to spin, but what it actually is doing is death rolling. So we call this a death roll because when it happens, the quad is not recovering. It's not coming back. Let's take a look at his black box and see what we can see. Let's find here's a minute 30. I'm going to guess. Do we have a flip out at the end here? Yeah, I think we do. So here at the end, he does a back. We can see the stick go back. He does a back flip. By the way, do you notice that when he... Here, let's zoom in here. Do you notice that when he gets to the bottom... And I used to do this too. For all I know, I still do. Do you notice that when he pushes the stick all the way down, he also pushes it to the right a little bit? This is a great reason for using black box, even if you're not interested in PID tuning. I'll bet you that he doesn't know he's doing that. I'll bet you he thinks his stick is going all the way down when he does this backflip, but he's actually pushing roll right just a little bit. I used to do that with my throttle, and regardless, that's not why this problem is happening. So here, it flips out and crashes. And we can see that the back motors spin up. We can see that the PID controller is trying to arrest this spin. But we disarm or we crash. The first thing I want to look at in a scenario like this is whether one of the motors is consistently running higher than the others. And I don't see that here. Like, a lot of the times, the front and the rear motors are spinning slightly differently. That's normal. And depending on, like, obviously, when we roll right, the right side motors spin up. But we don't see a case where, like, one of the motor traces is consistently running higher than the others. That would indicate a bad... oh, sorry, guys. I'll zoom out. That would indicate a bad motor or ESC. There's no obvious sign of a bad motor or ESC here. James says motor 1 looks funky later on. See, right here, for example, they're running pretty consistent. We're rolling right here, so the right side motors, again, are a little higher. So there's no obvious sign of a bad motor or ESC. I mean, there could still be a bad motor or ESC, but there's no, like, smoking gun. But then we do this move, this backflip. And boom. So what happens here? We go to 0 throttle. All of the motors go to idle. Let's zoom in just a little here. All of the motors go to idle. And there's a little bit of bouncing here, just stabilizing the quad. This is completely normal. We begin to backflip, and the front motors go up. There's a lot of oscillation. Do you see? I'm surprised that as we're going hard backflip, hard pitch back, that the motors they're oscillating a lot. Like, we would kind of expect them to see them go to max, and they kind of don't ever go to max. And they're really bouncing around. We'd have to look at the PIDs to answer that a little bit more. But and now we're back flipping. And it tries to arrest the fall as things get out of control. Let's look at the video one more time now that we have a little bit more context. We don't know if this is the exact same flip. Hopefully it would be. Okay. Let's go frame by frame here and look at what happens. Yeah, we can frame by frame this. We're back flipping. Oh, I already see it. Do you see that we're rolling to the left? Right here. Let me go back again. Here, we're going to begin the backflip. Mikhail Anderson, that is the motor throttle output. There is no PID controller on the motor RPM. There's just a throttle output. So that is essentially the set point for the motor. But saying the word set point suggests that there's a PID controller, and there isn't. Okay. Notice that, see that we're rolling straight back. Right here. We're pitching straight back, more or less. Notice that the horizon is not rolling to the left or right during these few frames. But right... Where is it? I thought I saw it roll left. I think it's begun to roll left. Let's see. No. I could be wrong. Maybe the tree just moved in the frame weird. No, see? This tree right here is not rotating. So we're still going... It was just this tree moving out of the frame. It looked like it was rolling. I see that it's not. This tree comes straight into frame. We're not rolling. Oh, there it went. It tries to arrest it. I believe you must recenter the stick. And right here, we are out of control. Now, we did not continue the roll, though, did we? It reversed the roll. It reversed the roll. We're going back, and then suddenly, boom, we're going the other direction. So what happened is the rear motors hit so hard, the quad just spun out. Wow. That's pretty unusual. Normally what will happen is that the quad will attempt to spin the motors. I guess I shouldn't assume that this black box is from this roll. It will attempt to arrest the spin, and will fail, and it will continue to roll the same direction. Now, of course, we really can't tell what's happening. It's just all a blur. So, what has he done? Betaflight stock, PIDs and filters, DMAG high. Yeah. What's the suggestion? We don't have a definitive answer there. When the motors rev like that, the flight controller is telling them to rev. And the fact that the two front motors spun up together, I think whenever you've got a bad motor or ESC, the quad will spin on the diagonal. Right? That's typically what happens when you have a bad motor or ESC. It spins on the diagonal because it'll spin towards the bad motor. This one, he was doing a straight backflip, and it went basically straight without rotating. And then at the very end, it went back the other way, again, without rotating on the diagonal. To me, this feels like people in the chat are saying the ESC is a problem. It certainly could be. The fact that it spins back without rotating to the diagonal, to me, feels like a flight controller issue. And then it flips out. That death roll definitely means that, like, you can't get a death roll from the flight controller, though. It's probably the ESC. It's probably the ESC. I mean, odds are. I think I would contact GetFPV support and ask them if they think you've got a bad stack. All right, let's move on. Lazy Norse, thanks for 20 kroner. I cleaned the pads and it booted up. Thank you. Awesome. X-Raptor Claw, thank you for $5. Pre-ordered the Firefly Hex with Vista. Any thoughts on this quad? I haven't flown the Firefly, but it looks pretty cool, and other people seem to have liked it. Craig Mitchell, thanks for a $5 super chat. I got some diatone Becks to run 5S on the air unit. One's 12 volts, the other three are 9 volts. Will they all be good to go? They need to be minimum 10 watts. So 12 volts, 1 amp, 9 volts, 1.5 amps, minimum 10 watts, but other than that, it doesn't really matter. Recursive FPV, thanks for $5 in the super chat. I noticed my Crossfire is on 868, so I changed it to 915 and up to 1 watts, but all my quads randomly fail safe. Please check Discord for the rest of the message. Recursive, where is your message? Uh-oh. The question, Recursive, is No, I don't see your message under that username, Recursive. Recursive, you shouldn't be... Are you in the USA or not? If you're in the USA, 915 is definitely where you need to be. I mean, if you're in Europe, then 868 is where you need to be. Being on the wrong one will cause failsafes. Martin Wynn, thank you for £5 in the super chat. Best sub 250 to work with that freak with same weak arm setup, or maybe not. Noob level, but not afraid to crash and learn fast, need spares, no sims. If you're looking for a sub 250 that can crash, I think I would steer you towards a toothpick. Because they are very thin, but very lightweight. Recursive, there you are. If it still fails safe, where are you? In the USA? Recursive, there's no question that if you're in the USA, 868 is interfering with the cell network. Okay? That is without debate. If you were on 868 and you weren't fail-safing, I don't know how you weren't. Maybe you're just not near cell towers. Switching to 915 and now you're randomly fail-safing, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. The only way it won't fail-safe... You got to contact TBS support. Am I crazy here? 868 is for Europe, 915 is for the US. I almost makes me wonder if you're doing something wrong in the settings. You do have to rebind. That is true. That is true. It almost makes you wonder if you're doing something wrong with the settings, because it sounds like you're describing the exact opposite of what you should be describing. Buddy Jackson asks, going back to the death roll, what makes this harder to diagnose or identify what might be happening? Buddy, the typical way that a death roll happens is that you do a roll of some kind, or a flip. At the end of that move, the quad is rolling this way, right? These motors are at idle. And at the end of the move, the motor has to go from idle to a very high value very quickly to stop the move. And the typical way that a death roll happens is that you're rolling to the right side motor fails to stop the move, and the quad continues to roll. So what yours was doing is you did the backflip, and at the end of the backflip, the quad suddenly went the other way, as if the motors spun up too much and inverted the move. And it's unclear why it would have done that. It's unclear why it would have done that. It's why, to me, it feels like a flight controller issue. We got another question here from Sync Happens in the Discord, who's having an issue with his Nazgul. Let's take a look at the Nazgul that he's working with here. Oh, Jesus. Oh, wow. What a disaster. Oh, boy. This hurts to listen to. Let's keep listening. Wow. So this is a gyro problem. That you hear what the motors are doing? That takeoff there, I think, was... I'm going to hope that was just maybe an inexperienced pilot. Continue. Do you hear those little... That's the gyro. That's bad gyro. Yeah. So 100%, that's a gyro problem. Now the question, there's too much vibration or electrical noise getting to the gyro. The question is, what's causing it and how do you fix it? You're going to want to make sure that your quad is mechanically sound. You're going to want soft-mounted flight controller, nothing touching the flight controller. Make sure all your stack screws are tight. This is a bind and fly, so presumably all of that stuff was done correctly at the factory, you would hope. This is an iFlight flight controller. My guess is that you just got unlucky and you have one with a bad gyro. Now, there is a thing you can do if you have a dual gyro flight controller to try to fix this. I have a video about this. Of course I do. But I'll show you right here real quick. Any minute now. There we go. What you can do is go into the... Dang it. Go into the configuration tab, and down here in the lower right where it says gyro/axle, instead of both, change it to first or second. If you have this board has two gyros on it. If one of the gyros has died, it'll cause this problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to change it to first, save and reboot. If that doesn't fix it, change it to second, save and reboot. If that fixes it, then just get on with your life. But you could also, if this is a bind and fly, you would hope that it would be functional out of the box. You can contact iFlight support. They will probably offer to send you another flight controller, which you can install yourself. Anyway, there you go. Daniel Boo said, thank you for $2. Have you seen the iNav video that's on their group? You're going to have to be more specific. I don't think I have. Michael Hill, thanks for $10 in the super chat. I was going to ask about your field charging setup today, but you said last week you were going to go over it soon, so I'll wait on that. Yeah, I am going to do a video about field charging. I will talk a little bit about it. Thank you for your $10 super chat, Michael. My usual approach to field charging is, number one, just bring enough packs. Just bring enough packs. Now, that is not the most cost-effective way to do it. If you do the math, a flight pack has to be high C rate, and so you pay a lot more watt hour per watt hour. You can get a 5C 10,000 milliamp hour 6S pack or a 15C pack way cheaper than you can get like a 120C 1500 milliamp hour or 1000 milliamp hours 6S, something like that. So field charging is economical, but my first goal is just to have enough packs so that I don't have to think about field charging. By the way, sorry about the USB sound. That was me, not you. Everybody out there's like, what unplugged from my computer? Sorry, I try not to send those over the live stream, but I just did by accident. So if you say, okay, I'm going to field charge, then what are your choices? The number one thing that I do is I have an XT60 hooked up to my car battery. I did a video about installing it where I revealed a lot that I don't know about automobiles. Like, for example, I didn't realize, get ready to think about how dumb I am. I didn't realize that all cars today use a 10 millimeter nut for their battery terminal lugs. I just assumed that a Ford, being an American car, would have an Imperial, an inches nut. Everybody in the comments was like, no, all cars use metric. Okay, I didn't know that. In fact, apparently there's a running joke about the 10 millimeter socket disappearing because it's so used. Regardless, I made a video where I put an XT60. I put permanent like ring terminals. I installed it on my battery. Somebody reached out to me once and they said, I put my alligator clips backwards on my battery and I killed my charger. How can I protect against this? And I was like, get some ring terminals and permanently install them on your battery. And then you just make sure it's right once and it'll be fine forever. So typically what I'll do if I'm field charging is I'll run the car, I'll idle the car, and I'll charge under my hood. There are some downsides to this. One is that you're idling the car, which is just wasting gas. You know, it's not the end of the world, but it's like, oh, it doesn't feel great to be running this gigantic engine just to charge my stupid batteries. The other downside is that, and I've seen this happen here in Knoxville, somebody's battery lit on fire and lit their engine bay on fire. And they were fortunately able to, like, the car drove away that day, so it wasn't permanently damaged. But boy, it was bad. So there's always a risk that way. Now, there's various other ways you can field charge. In fact, if you look back on my desk right there, that is a giant deep cycle discharge, deep discharge lead battery that was lent to me by Kevin Turner. Evan Turner's dad. I met him this week. We did some flying. I lent him my Rely-On battery, and he lent me his big lead-acid battery. And I'm going to be doing a video running down the pros and cons of different methods of field charging. Nevertheless, that's how I do it, is I either bring enough packs or I charge off my car. Mikhail Anderson says, I use long wires so I can charge a safe distance from the car. Yeah, the only thing is that the longer the wire, the more voltage drop you get. So you've got 12 volts, whatever, 13.5 volts coming off the alternator. And then you're charging, if you have a big long wire, you're going to lose a lot of voltage. So always use a fuse on your battery connections, 100% Metamark, and I do. How many amp hours is that lead acid battery? Seth Inman asks. Well, that's actually what I'm testing right this minute, Seth. Yeah, it's a little hard to see, but there's a wire wound resistor there, and I'm discharging the battery through the resistor. That's also why there's a fan there, little fan to keep it from getting too hot. Currently, I had to stop the discharge because I wanted to go to bed. Currently, it's at something like 30 amp hours. Which is pretty impressive, honestly. And it's not quite... Part of the problem is that for a 12-volt lead battery, when is it dead? Because the more you discharge it, the lower its life cycle will be. You can discharge this battery down to like 11 volts or something, at which point it's like 0%. But if you do that, it'll damage the battery. Whereas if you only discharge it to like 12.2 volts... then it'll last a lot longer, but you won't get as many amp hours. So I'm working on it. How many amps can you pull from the car battery? Well, your alternator, I mean, your car battery can discharge 200 amps, but only for a very short period of time. Your car alternator, I don't know. How many amps is an alternator usually good for? I mean, it probably depends on cars. Gaptooth Granny, this is a deep cycle battery, so it can go below 12.6. I mean, I've never had a problem with my alternator because I'm typically charging at like 4 amps, maybe 6 or 8 amps. I've never had a problem with my alternator. Yeah, I think alternators can do like a lot of amps. I think I've never had a problem on my car, though. I hear people saying 10 amps. Other people are saying 75 amps. That's a pretty big window. I think they do more than 10 amps. Mikhail Anderson says, I doubt you'd find a modern car with less than 100 amp alternator. Yeah. I mean, it's a gigantic gasoline engine. It can surely afford to have some amps. Now, here's the thing I'm most looking forward to testing. Kevin Turner also lent me this. This isn't the exact one he lent me, but he lent me something like this. It is a Walmart special. It might be this exact one. I think it might actually be this exact one. It's a Walmart special. Now this thing, 1,000 watts. That's more than enough for charging lipos. This thing will run all freaking day. Okay, 6 hours. 6-hour runtime off of like a gallon of gas. Costs $300. So this thing is only slightly more expensive than a deep cycle lead acid battery. It's lighter. It runs longer. It's louder. Okay, it's louder. But this is pretty freaking compelling. So we'll have to see. I'm looking forward to doing all the pros and cons of it. Best goggles under 150, which is not a box goggle, asks Nathan Ram. There is no goggle under $150. Box goggle is the only thing worth looking at. Yeah, it's the only thing worth looking at. Do not get the EV100. Robert Rempel says it needs to be a sine wave generator. Yeah, I mean, this is an inverter generator, so presumably it's a sine wave. The thing is, I've always known about, like, the little Honda generators. I used to lust after a little 1,000-watt Honda, because it used to be that those Honda generators were, like, the only sine wave generators you could get. Honda was one of the first to do it, and they were so expensive. It was like $1,000, let's say it was $1,000 for a little 1,000-watt Honda generator. It was expensive. And nowadays, you can get a $250, $300 1,000-watt sine wave generator. And is it Honda quality? Surely not. But at that price, I think it becomes very, very compelling. Yeah. Starjumper says the real solution to field charging is you get a fancy electric car. Now you have all the batteries you want. See, everybody says, just charge off your car. That assumes you're flying near your car. It's not always true for everybody. Sometimes it is. It's not always true for everybody. Beaks, I have a video where I showed how I did it. Beaks in the Discord is asking, like, what do you mean? Here we go. No, I am not on that account. Stop it. I have YouTube Premium. I don't want to see ads. Shut up. So I've got this ring I don't know how well you can see it, but you can watch the video, I suppose. I've got this ring terminal lead, and I just installed it on my battery. You know? We're at 10 millimeter. There you go. See, I'm just installing it on my battery. It's just an XT60. So. What happens when batteries of different chemistries are connected in parallel and the voltage gets out of the chemistry's range? Orca Blacksail, do not connect mixed chemistries in parallel. Don't do that. Don't do that. What happens is that either one of the batteries dies or one of the batteries lights on fire, depending on if the voltage ends up too high or too low. Michelle and Randy Krieger are asking for the Discord link. To get on the Discord, you need to sign up on my Patreon. That is how you get access to the Discord. Colt Singh says, as a previous car audio enthusiast, a normal running engine should be able to put out an extra 300 or 400 watts of power for quite a while with no issue and not draining your battery. Yeah, I guess if you do car audio, then those amplifiers can draw some power, for sure. Henrik, thank you for another $10 super chat. Thanks for replying to my email and helping me out. Sure thing, man. Absolutely. I always try and answer my emails a couple times a day, get the inbox cleared out. King of Losing, thanks for $2 Canadian. What's the all-up weight of your freestyle drone? GoPro 8? I can tell you that I weighed this. Remember, my goal was to get the weight down from my normal 850 to 750 to 800 grams. So I weighed this with a 6S 1050, a Hero 8, and an analog video transmitter. And it came in at just, I think it was like 702, which I was pretty freaking happy with. Because there's a big difference between 850 or 750, 770, and 700. And I'm using the Hero 8 because that is the print that Chris Ney sent me. He asked, do you want a Hero 7 or a Hero 8? And at the time, all my Hero 7s had been broken and I only had a Hero 8. I've since managed to source a couple more 7s. I prefer to fly the 7 because the 7 is, I think it's at least 15 and maybe as much as 20 or 25 grams lighter than the 8. So I normally would fly a 7. So I think that with a Hero 7 and a Caddx Vista, which is how I would normally fly this, this would come in just a little under 700, which I'm pretty happy with. I got another build here. This is a build from the Discord from Aerobrat. He's posted, wow. Oh, that's without the GoPro though. Okay. 617 without the GoPro with a CNHL black 6S. Nice props as well. So again, that would be coming in. What's a Hero 8 weigh? Is it over? I gotta look it up. Hero 8, 117 grams. So you're over 700, 117 grams. You're around 720. Still respectable. Still respectable. Paul McDonald, thanks for a $5 super chat. How do you go about choosing the proper size capacitor for your builds? For a 5-inch, I think 1,000 microfarads is sufficient. No reason to go much bigger. For a 6S, I would use a 35 volt 1,000 microfarad. You could do 50 microfarad. It would be better. Like you could do a 470 microfarad 50 volt or 1,000 microfarad 35 volt. For the smaller builds, like you say you're using a 1507 Cine setup, so you're not doing 5-inch. For the smaller builds, you can use smaller capacitors. It's generally better to have a little bit bigger capacitor if you have room for it on your build. Like if you're doing a tiny trainer or a toothpick, there's not a lot of room on there for your capacitor. You got to kind of figure out where to work it in. But on a Cinewhoop, usually you have plenty of room. So I would probably just go with like a 470 microfarad. If it's 6S, I would do a 35 volt. There's seldom a reason to go higher than 1,000 microfarads. Like on my Beast class, every single ESC had like a 1,000 microfarad 50 volt. I think it was 50 volt, which is weird because it was 12S. So probably needed to be higher than 50 volts, but that's what they sent me. But that thing had 1,000 microfarads on each ESC. But for a typical 5-inch and below, 1,000 microfarads is more than sufficient. Do you really need a capacitor? If you're using digital video, remember that the capacitor is not just there to clean up the analog video. So 2 things. Number 1, a capacitor will also clean up digital video. I was talking to... I don't remember who I was talking to. But this person who I was talking to said that... yes, I do. It was Mr. Shutterbug. Mr. Shutterbug was talking about a video on his little toothpick builds. And he said that he thought that a capacitor cleaned up the video from SharkBite. And he said, in addition, he thought he got higher bit rate and lower latency by putting a capacitor on his DJI build. So capacitors clean up your video even if you're using digital video. But capacitors are about more than clean video, because I have lots of builds that have plenty clean video, even with no capacitor. This was back when I was running 4S. Now that I mostly run 6S, I put capacitors on all my builds, because even if your video is clean, you can fry your ESC more easily. I'm putting both a capacitor and a FETtech spike absorber, which is a TVS diode, on my builds to help protect the ESC. So yeah, you still need it. Can it be useful to use more than one capacitor in parallel? I mean, capacitors in parallel, all they do is they sum their capacitance. So 2 500 microfarads in parallel is roughly equivalent to 1,000 microfarad. So I don't think there's a real benefit to that. Just get one. Hero Psycho argues that if you are using a TVS diode, you arguably don't need as big of a capacitor. Probably true, nevertheless. I mean, on this build, I have 1,000 microfarad capacitor and a TVS and a FETtech spike absorber, because I don't like frying my ESCs. Daniel Boo is talking about alternators. Daniel Boo is watching the replay, and he's about 20 minutes behind on the stream, but the comments are coming in now. Aerobrat says, why would Cricket say that capacitors are for wimps? Just because he likes to be inflammatory. There is no downside to having a capacitor on your build other than weight, which is not that much. And it is hugely beneficial for protecting your ESC and cleaning up your video. Quad Forsaken FPV, thanks for $9.99 pounds. Aubrey Denning, thanks for $4.99 technically. Thanks for the super chat. Any thoughts or news on the iFlight Crystal Patch Stubby combo from Race Day Quads? It's 5 gigahertz, so I'm assuming what we've been waiting on for the V2 goggles. Whether you want 5 gigahertz for the V2 goggles depends on if you are using the DJI FPV drone. If you are not using the DJI FPV drone, then you want 5 gigahertz. You do not want dual band. If you are using the DJI FPV drone, then you might prefer a dual band antenna. It will have better range when using the drone, but worse range when using the air unit and the Vista. Nuovo, thank you for €2. What's a good capacitor voltage for 6S? Many professional builds use 35 volts. The engineering guideline for a capacitor is to 50% derate the capacitor. So if you have a 25 volts system voltage, you would use a 50 volt capacitor. Quadcopters typically don't do that. The voltage limit, the capacitor will wear out sooner, and it won't do as good a job of protecting against the spikes, but we're trying to balance out the need to save weight. So for a 6S build, 35 volts is common, 50 volts is better. The big question that people ask, and I don't know the answer to this question, is let's say that for the same approximate size and weight, you could have a 470 microfarad, a 470 microfarad 50 volt, or 1,000 microfarad 35 volt. Which one should you pick? I don't know the answer. Can anybody pull out a data sheet and tell me the answer to that? Yeah, 1,000 microfarad 50 volt is huge. Nobody's going to do that. They're gigantic. Not on a 5-inch. So let's say a 470 50 volt or 1,000 microfarad, because I think those are closer to the same size. There's a freaking fly in here. It's bugging the crap out of me. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. Sorry, guys. Abraham says in the Discord, by the way, again, people are asking, is there a link to your Discord? Again, the link to my Patreon is in the video description. That's how you get onto the Discord, is you join the Patreon. The Discord is for patrons only, so far anyway. Bad for Life says, sorry, Abraham, I'll get back to you. Bad for Life says a 35 volt 1,000 microfarad has more capacitance than a 50 volt 470. If both are being used on 6 builds, the 35 could wear out earlier, though. Yeah. So Abraham says, so this mantra of needing caps for 6S but not 4S is nonsense. Yeah, so I have built many 4S builds, and they don't have a separate capacitor on them and had fine results. There is no doubt that a build will be more protected from damage and have cleaner video if you have a capacitor on it. But at 4S voltage, like let's say you've got a 6S rated ESC. So the FETs, let's say they're rated for 30 volts, or maybe they're rated for 40 volts in some cases. If you're running 4S, you're running down at 17 volts or less. So you have a lot of headroom there. You're much less likely to fry the ESC if running on 4S. And as far as video goes, if there's like enough capacitance in the ESC, and if your voltage regulator is pretty clean, then you can have fine video and not feel like you need a capacitor. But when you're running 6S, those FETs are still rated for 30 or 40 volts typically. And now you're running at 25 volts, so you have much less headroom, and you're much more likely to fry the ESC. And you're more likely to have video noise, depending. I mean, there's an argument to be made that the lower the voltage regulator output is compared to the input, the more the voltage regulator will filter. So there's an argument that if you're running your VTX off a 9-volt regulator and your camera off a 5-volt regulator, that going to 6S will actually result in more filtering. But the problem is that going to 6S also results in more electrical noise, just bigger voltage spikes. And so I don't think that's generally true, that you get cleaner video on 6S. So on 6S, my argument is that you always need a capacitor on 6S because you are much closer to the voltage limit of the FETs on the ESC. Whereas on 4S, you have a ton of headroom, and you're more likely to just luck out. DocOck100, thanks for 15 pounds. I've spent more time watching your videos than Netflix, so I feel morally obliged to contribute. Thank you so much for that, DocOck. And Don E, thanks for $1.49 with a hot dog sticker. Orestes Guitar says, I get device ready no on smart audio, even though I'm doing everything right. Help. Orestes, we're going to have to go over your wiring is where I would start. Looking at your wiring and your ports tab. Email me. We're not gonna go back and forth with the chat delay trying to solve it, but email me and I'll be glad to help you out with that. Mark Webster FPV says, I'm going to change bearings on some old hype train motors. What's the best way? Mark, I got to be honest with you. I have tried changing bearings on motors before, and I have never done it successfully. I'm just going to admit it. And now the same people who thought I was a dumbass because I didn't know that car batteries use 10mm drivers are going, oh, what kind of a jerk doesn't know how to change a bearing? There you go. I'm just going to fess up. I've never successfully changed a bearing on a motor. Here's what happens. Number one, you take the C-clip off, bling, the C-clip's gone. Now you're screwed. Or as you take the C-clip off, you destroy it. Oh, okay, maybe the motor has a screw. Now, make sure that you heat that screw up with your soldering iron before you try and take it off, because usually motors with screws, they're Loctited, and sometimes they use the permanent Loctite. So what you want to do is you want to pinch the shaft in your finger and put your soldering iron on the screw until you feel heat in the shaft, and that tells you the screw has heated up. And now you can take the screw out. Okay, good. I didn't just twist the head of the screw off. No, I've never done that. Or strip the screw out. Like, this motor sucks. No, I'm an idiot because it was Loctited. I didn't know that. So, now, the screw is out. The bell comes off. Time to remove the bearings. How am I going to get the bearings out? What, do I have a bearing puller? What, do I have a hydraulic press? I'm going to, push the bearing out? No. So I get the bearing out somehow, destroying the bearing in the process, but who cares? It's the old bearing. I'm replacing it anyway. Dang, 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 with a hammer and a freaking, I don't know what, some kind of a big Allen wrench stuck through there. Now the bearings are out. Now I got to put the new bearings in. I don't know. They don't go in. That's like it's too tight. How do you get them in? I don't know. You need a hydraulic press. You need a bearing press. Dang, 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 dang. Now I destroy the bearings putting them in. And I'm like, to hell with this. And I just buy a new motor. So I'm not the guy to tell you how to do it. You know how I change bearings? Is I buy a new motor. I buy a new motor. Heat the shaft. Yeah, you could. There's all kinds of tricks you can do. I know that changing bearings is a thing that machinists and mechanics do. I know that it can be done. I've just never succeeded at it. Freeze the bearings. They get smaller. Yeah, okay. Put them in the freezer. I tried that once. You put the bearing in the freezer. Yeah. Use the old bearing to push the new one in. Use like a bolt and a washer. That's clever, Robin FPV. Take like a washer and a bolt through the bearing, and then you just crank down on it and use it like a hydraulic press to push the new bearing in. That's a good idea. I swear to God, every time I think about doing this, I just decided rather spend $20 on a new motor. Sorry. I'm just like, forget about it. Just because I've been unsuccessful so many times in a row that now I just assume that I'm going to fail. Timber Bunny, you don't need to heat the bell. You would need to heat the base. You need to. You put the stator in the freezer. You put the bearing in the. Don't put the bearing in the microwave. Anyway, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying I'm not the guy to tell you how to do it because I have never done it successfully. I have never, literally never successfully changed bearings. Maybe once. Like I think from a long time ago, I might have a video about changing bearings, but anyway, there you go. Ciati points out, you destroy more bells than stators anyway. So Ciati says every time you destroy a bell, save the stator. And then instead of changing the bearings, just put the new stator on. That's a thought. Yeah, the problem is that you can't put pressure on the inner race or you're likely to destroy the bearing. And getting pressure on the outer race is very difficult. Denting the shielding. Yep, done that, Robin. Done that. Anyway. We're coming to the end of the stream. I've just noticed it's 2:52. I've been just having such a good time that I've just realized that, yeah, we're coming to the end of the stream. 661 FPV says, as a diesel mechanic, this is amusing. I know. I know that this is a thing that people do, and you could just do it if you know how to do it. I don't know how to do it, and I've failed too many times. Wayne Grant, thank you for 70 South African Rand. Hoda D6 Pro with 2 UAV backlight B6 Pro parallel boards. I'm getting polarity error every time I remove packs after charge. I mean, if the packs are fully charged and you're just removing them, then I would be just like, I don't care about errors. There must be some little spike or something that's happening, but assuming the packs are being charged correctly, I wouldn't worry about a little error message when I unplug them. Ciati FPV is going to be doing a stream. Let me tell you guys, in about 7 minutes, I'm going to be done streaming. I want to tell you guys that Ciati is going to be streaming on his channel starting at 3 p.m. He says he's going to show you how to change motor bearings. Maybe I should tune in. I also want to tell you Ghost Branch. Ghost Branch FPV is going to be streaming at 3 p.m. As well. And he is going to be doing a review of this new AI FPV simulator. We talked about this on the news live stream, me and Blunty. I got an email from this guy who's developed this AI FPV simulator where you import your black box log and it learns all this information about how your quadcopter flies from your black box log. Like when you hit the throttle, how fast does it accelerate? Like originally I thought it was just pulling like your rates, but this is how I communicate with people. I just say things on live streams and then they email me and correct me. That's how we're just holding a long distance conversation. I said I thought it was just rates, but he emailed me and he was like, no, it's way more than rates. We're pulling out the acceleration. We're pulling out the step response of the PIDs to try to make the simulator fly as much like your real quad as possible. So fine. It's also got these cool environments. And I said to Blunty, will you check this out for me? Will you see what you think of it? And Blunty was like, oh my God, it's amazing. The environments are great. The physics are great. This is incredible. So now I have to try it out. Ghost Branch is going to be trying out this simulator on his stream. So you have plenty of choices if you want to stream. Keep watching streaming. It's rainy here in Knoxville, so I won't be flying. And we'll figure it out. You got plenty of a choice for content. Ciati and Ghost Branch. Pacific Northwest Pilots asks, any update on the Pyrodrone backpack? Pyrodrone sent me another bag. There's no update because like I took the bag to Rampage and used it at Rampage, and then the buckle broke and the stitch ripped out. And then I was like, then now I'm back from Rampage. And of course, that size of bag is overkill for for going to Rampage where you need everything that you could possibly want. It's a great choice, but I've gone back to my Torval, and I'm not sure, I got to be honest, the next time I have a big trip, am I going to take the Pyrodrone bag? Because it failed me once. I mean, losing a shoulder strap is a pretty big deal. Now, I should say, Pyrodrone says that they have sold a few hundred of this bag and have only gotten 2 reports of this thing, of a defect. And I should say, I also have only heard 2 reports of a defect. It was me and this other guy who was at Rampage. Both of us had the shoulder strap break and rip off of the Pyrodrone backpack. Normally a manufacturer, here's how it goes when you're a YouTube reviewer. Dear manufacturer, your product died on me and I had a problem with it. Oh, here there are 3 canned responses. Number 1, oh wow, you're the only person this has ever happened to. Number 2, oh, we accidentally sent you a prototype. We knew about that. Let me send you a new one. Or number 3, no, I don't know. That was it. That was the 2 canned responses. So when a manufacturer says, oh, yeah, no, this hasn't happened to anybody else. What bad luck that it happened to you. I'm like, uh-huh. But seriously, I was looking in the YouTube comments, and it's me and this other guy are the only 2 people I've ever heard of having this problem with a Pyrodrone bag. So, okay, let's believe him that in general the bag is solid and it's just bad luck. Still, having ripped out on me once, if I'm in the middle of an airport and I lose the shoulder strap, I don't know. Wrong Way FPV says, my pyro bag is about 80 pounds. I've hiked in the woods and under fences with it. No issues yet. Yeah. I mean, Bobby Bags, I think I, as a person with a media outlet, I think I'm most likely to hear if there are defects, right? Like, I'm probably going to hear about most of the defects, I would think. So the fact that I've only heard of 2 supports Pyrodrone's claim that only a very few of the bags had an issue. Anyway, they did send me another one. I haven't used it again, just because I haven't had a big trip, mostly. Nick Naus says, considering it broke on you twice, I wouldn't consider buying one. Yeah, see, the plastic buckle broke, and then I just tied it off, and then the stitches ripped out. So I think those plastic buckles, I would feel better if they were upgraded. But and I said this in the review of both the AU line and the Pyro bag, that the safest choice today is the Torval Pitstop Pro. Torval has made this bag for years. They are a bag manufacturer first and foremost. They make a great product. I've had my Torval for 2, maybe 3 years. It has been flawless. Anytime you buy a new bag from a company that, like, if Lowpro made a new bag or if Think Tank made a new bag, they know how to make bags. That's what they do. But if Pyrodrone makes a new bag or AU-Line makes a new bag, it's their first bag. Now, they didn't make the bag. A bag manufacturer made it. But yeah, the Torval Pitstop Pro is, that's the safe choice today. It's not as big as the Pyrodrone, though, so maybe you want to take a chance on a bigger bag. You are taking a chance anytime you buy a new product like that. Anyway, we're coming to the end of the stream. Again, Aaron Ciotti is going to post, he's been posting the link to his stream, and Ghost Branch FPV is going to be trying out the new AI simulator. So they're welcome. You guys are welcome to go raid them. In the meantime, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you, patrons in the Discord. And that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. 8 p.m. Eastern Time for another stream. Look forward this week. The Ultimate Freestyle build is coming out. If you want to know how I've built out my QAV-S and other good stuff. I totally agree, License to Drive. The strap system is the weakness of the Torval. That is one of the weakness of it. Alrighty, guys. That's going to do it. Thank you so much for coming out. Have a great weekend. Have a great stream. Ghost Branch and Ciotti. Bye, everybody. Happy flying.